Hey there guys, welcome to part 2. So with part 2 it's very much where we left off. So really now as we move on, we'll get into those tertiary details, but this is the secondary forms mostly. So really working with what we have and adding. This is kind of that step, and you're not really changing too much of the primary forms. You're going in and refining things and making things work and make sense, essentially, with the secondary stuff. Well, for me anyway, I find that is the case, and doing so will make other things more apparent, certain constructual errors, I would say, where things have to connect and hook up and work as a function. You'll figure that out here. So like clearance issues, just logical functions. Sorry, still coughing. Logical functions that will avail themselves here. So yeah, it's where, pardon, what the pun is, well, pardon the pun, where the rubber hits the road, so we really have to, if that analogy is a good analogy for this instance of the design analogy, who knows, but yeah, and really figuring out at the end of the day, what do you want from it? The type of finish. This is where it kind of comes together. You really have to be aware that as I was working on this, I ended up converting it to an electric engine. So this is where I'm essentially defining that ideal ideas and things like that. So ideology, in other words, and yeah, it's an interesting project for me anyway, because I have not done something really serious in the sense that it's almost like you're really competing with other automotive designers. So it's usually in the film or game area. So yeah, doing these types of designs can be challenging, but also very rewarding, because it will open you up to different ways of thinking and looking at things. So here I'm just quickly making some details for some sort of mechanical part there. Nothing too serious. I didn't want to focus on doing details. It's something that, for a concept anyway, if I can get away with the least minimal, least minimal amount of work to, look, if this is going to be a detail, I'm just going to do the basic shape and some little bit of detail to help sell it. You don't have to be getting in every little nook and cranny here, because this is fairly simple, and also you don't have to be super neat with that. And yeah, you can do very quick parts in Dynamesh. It will take no time at all. And essentially, when you do those parts, try and be loose. Try and not be so emotionally invested in those things, because they could change and morph as you have to move it along the line of the detailing, and just so you kind of register some sort of attention there. You put the attention to detail there. Your eye will be like, hey, what is that? And that must be a certain function. So it will perform a certain function and things like that. So you want to draw the viewer to certain areas. You want to be not drawing the viewer to certain other areas also. Like it's kind of, well, not that exactly, but it's like a glide with your eyes. You're taking interest in areas. So you can imagine the eye scanning around on your design and taking interest and absorbing things. And through that process of scanning and absorption, you develop a somewhat a narrative of understanding what this might be. And with design, this is how you tell a story without writing a story. So me taking away the petrol engine will write a different narrative on what expression this has to you. So it would be more in harmony with nature automatically from that, from converting it. And so you would get a different feeling from that, and a different emotion will come from that. It wouldn't be loud and burly. It would be very streamlined and smooth and in its function. So then then you add those functions, or the look of that function, looking very much like this thing can glide through the air. So it can be difficult to start working on different parts within the bike. The kind of inside there, you're trying to maneuver things around, get things to line up, and start working with the overall outside shape, the shell, I would say, of the design. And you don't want to be adding certain subframe and detail shapes in there that are in conflict with the shell. So you want to be respecting of that, and you don't want to be adding too many details to draw your eye to things that are unnecessary. So I did make that mistake here, and you'll see that I've deleted some of the sections out of the bike. So I went through and deleted such things because ultimately that's what happened. I thought my eye has been drawn to these areas, and I didn't really like the attention to that. I wanted the attention to the lines of the bike, and that's the way you're telling the viewer, hey, look at this instead of that. And it's like being a cinematographer for a design, or I think that would be the analogy to use there, where you're directing how someone takes something in. And that's important. And I think that is not really understood by many people, where you're choreographing things, if that is a better word to use, and you're going and directing the person and be like, yep, this is how you should look at it. This is how I want you to take it in. And sometimes you can stop the viewer from looking at things that aren't so well designed, or things that maybe perhaps you couldn't solve. So, yes, this is a way that I would think about it if I was to really break it down, and which is that takes practice, right? Because there's a compulsion to make things really detailed, and when you do that, your ability to direct will be more complicated, and you're having to deal with more things. So the management of all those things have to really be paid attention to. So this is perhaps why I almost down-regulated some of the detailing, because I thought, well, it's a quick concept. I can only do so much in that given time, and so if I overdo one area, I'll have to bring up the standard for the rest of everything else. So if I understand that, I'm going to shoot a bit lower while not sacrificing qualities, because that would, in my eyes, would sacrifice quality, because it would be a mismatch in detail. And I'd be like, well, I mean, the person would be like, why'd you detail this much here and there? And also a miscommunication direction, I should say, directing the viewer of where they should be paying attention to. So just adding some alphas, so some tertiary details there. Again, this is where pretty sure I delete that cylinder shape out of it, or I do something different with it. I'm just checking the lighting. See, I really like. Some people might like this design more because it's like this big engine looking thing, and you know, it's like this, got these big pipes and coolant structure there. But yeah, ultimately, what I did is I kind of exchanged the tires to be really big, and that type of impact of being really big and wide and solid. So as the tires normally have spokes of some sort, I didn't do that here. And so I was, in my mind, I was making up for that loss of that big bulkiness of the engine. And I put it into the wheels. I've always liked big fat wheels on motorbikes. I always thought they look so cool. So I pretty much just went full tilt, or whatever the saying goes, full metal jacket. I don't know, but yeah, I really expressed that there. So I'm still trying to massage out some of the details around here on the edges, trying to keep that there, and still exploring that type of head for the motorbike. It didn't agree at the end of the day. It didn't agree, and again, you guys might be like, "Hey, that looks pretty cool," but I came back to the understanding that this is too gamey or movie-like, where it's like, "Wow, bam, look at this, impressive," like this type of. This is what like there's a certain impressive level that the seriousness that games and movies go through, where it's unless it's a really serious movie or game, but games have a gaminess and movies have that movie type of design language to it, but it's not all equal, right? So, but wanted it to be taken seriously, so I took it off, or added more of a different type of cool factor. I would summarize for that. So I'm just really going in there and making some of the internal parts kind of match up with the outside, so it's not just passing through geometry. That's an important thing to do. And if you want to create a level of believability, don't have things pass through geometry. That's that's a no-no. Have things line up with the geometry, and so sit on top of it, like this part here that I've extracted. I'm having it line up with the geometry, and not just be semi halfway in collapsing into the other geometry, because it just reads as messy, and you can't read the line work. So it's all about panel construction lines, edge flow in the sense where edges flow and catch the light. So this tutorial is it's not really a how to do make use brushes or anything like that. It's just the understanding of establishing a design and what one may look out for when doing such a design. And there's no right or wrong way, just my understanding of this duration of time, which can always change and evolve, as we are constantly evolving creatures, and our opinions are always changing, and we are never the same. As every day we wake up, we are a new individual, and we are always growing. So whatever I mention here isn't like a concrete way of approaching design, and I'm constantly evolving. So when you take this on, you're taking on a certain certain level of awareness, which will open up your level of awareness of maybe how you want to approach something, and ultimately build upon what I'm doing here, and ultimately surpass. So this is what happens. You end up surpassing certain things that you learn, and that's a good thing. So, and we all learn from each other. So that's the great thing about the community that we are in. So I'm still trying to tweak this shape. It's a funny shape. I'm still like, yeah, I'm going to keep that open thing there, and I know it's terrible because I know I'll get rid of it. But as I said, don't be married to anything, because in life things change. Be adaptable. If you're adaptable, you'll grow with things and not against the design. So grow with the design. I always look at design as an evolution, a growth in a sense. So that's why I love using Dynamesh, because I grow with the design, I evolve with the design, and I love just being able to do that. And it's a true form of an expression in 3 dimensions, where you don't have to be too committed to forms. And if you really want to be committed to these forms, then you could take that into a CAD environment or sub-D environment, and ultimately rebuild all this. So, which wouldn't be difficult, especially since you've got the 3D geometry. So you've solved 70% of your hassles of thinking about things. Probably 60% if you really want to put a real true number on it. So but that's a lot better than 0. All right, so if you sat down in a sub-D or a CAD environment, you're like, well, what do I do? You know, like, so I think people are missing the opportunity to concept in 3D, like so, and even pen when you sit down. This is why these methods are used still today, and I think every method has its pros and cons, and no method is outdated. Nothing is outdated. I would say that for a fact. And with every new method that gets invented, you lose something. That's the sad fact. So it's kind of like when you look at oil painting. Oil painting is a real beautiful art, and the certain brush stroke that you get with the randomness, and at times you can get randomness, and just the nature of oil painting, it's going to produce this really beautiful effect of being so uniquely different to sitting in Adobe and painting. So there's always pros and cons. It might be you might be quicker in Adobe, and you might be cleaner. You won't get everything so messy. So, and you can undo things. So, all right, I'm doing the shocks here. They look all right. I didn't think they were too obtrusive to add, and I really thought adding those hydraulics there would give a sense of realism, and balancing that realism with concept is something that I want to do. It's something that is fun to me, and yeah, doing that would just get that little itch that I've got for not taking this so seriously. As always, the wheels are my ridiculous part of this design. I'm still playing with this shape. And there's like a little tachometer there, like a little speedo. It's like a little digital one that I put there. I didn't really detail it, but I put the instance of that, maybe that understanding that is a tachometer, like a little digital we'll say OLED screen. Because let's be realistic, everything's OLED now. So, especially for small screens, for that to be there. So I'm experimenting. We're getting rid of that. I'm like, let's get rid of it. Let's try it. But I'm trying to keep in some sort of. But I'm going to fully commit and get rid of it. As you can see, I've got a bit of an error in the video. It says focused work time. 2 hours until chat. I can explain this, and it's because I was on Twitch streaming, so I generally record on Twitch at times, so I left that there by accident. I didn't leave it there. I recorded the wrong OBS recording, so just ignore it. So, but yeah, so there we go. It's gone. That little ventilation of sorts is gone. Now it's just lovely and simple and streamlined and simple. So you can see that where the approach is to take the gamey and ness out of it and really take it. And looking at it's like to me, it's like when you look at a Ferrari, right? Let's say the old Ferraris. I think the new Ferraris are subjectively different in terms of. I think I prefer the old ones because of just the nature of how they design things now. I think they still look cool. Don't get me wrong, but I think when you look at old Ferraris, like damn, look at the curvature and things like that. So it's really focusing on that curvature and not just because you have a surface, you don't have to put something on it or put a hole in it, right? Just but like I'm gonna leave it alone and I'm gonna work on the form and let that express through, essentially. And focusing on form is a great way to express things. So yeah, don't chuck things at things. So just let it be. See how you feel. You won't lose anything at the end of the day. You can always add it. So I'm doing the disc detail. Something simple. Just playing with the radial number count there and figuring out to count that's not going to be too detailed, something that reads well, because even you pay attention to these types of detail, you're like, well, there's too many, my eye's been drawn to that area too much, I want to simplify it in a sense. And then maybe there's a functionality of there is a functionality, let's be honest, the cooling, how many ventilation holes will you need to cool a disc? I don't know, but I'll reference it, I'll check it out, and we'll see maybe how that looks there. So I figured out what this is, the brake caliper. Pretty sure it's called the brake caliper there. So working on that, just the functionality of that, and I'm sure people, if they don't know what that is, it is a thing that makes the bike stop. They have these in cars, and they work on a dysfunction. I believe there used to be something called drum brakes, but I don't know if they had drum brakes. No, they did have drum brakes for motorbikes, and the way they used to work is kind of archaic in a way. But they used to have, everything's got their pros and cons. I think they used to brake better in some instances, while other instances they didn't. I think I could be totally wrong by that. And they used to look like a drum, and they would have two brake calipers on the inside, in a sense, not the ones that you see on a disc, where the disc has it's like a thing with a hydraulic that pushes against the disc, and these pads can wear out, and it breaks. It stops the vehicle from moving. And so with the old ones, the old drum brakes, they used to have the discs that rub on the outside of the drum and push outwards and apply pressure that way. But that was all like encased in a thing, so someone has come along and simplified it. And drum brakes went the way of the dodo, and they were never used again, because drum brakes are really archaic. And if you've ever taken them apart, I've taken them apart before, because I've worked on cars, which is a really good, if you have a really good understanding of certain vehicles and things like that, and it would help with your design stuff. Even just looking at references would help, or looking at things on YouTube for car maintenance would help you design such things. So I would suggest figuring out a way, or finding a way, I should say, and looking at how things work, because it will help you design things. It will definitely help you design things. So It's the same for robotics and looking at such things like how does an arm work? How does this hydraulic fit into here and move the arm up and down? How does the leg move? How does the hip move? Spine move? Various things, etc., etc. You don't have to get it one for one, but a general understanding will be always appreciated by your designer, because people will then relate some sort of engineering to the real world and correlate that with being more believable at the end of the day. And this is essentially what you're trying to sell to people. So yeah, if you guys can do that, it's a bonus, right? So I'm just working on this a little, little detail, but it's that extracted detail that I made there, and really just giving it a little bit more polish. I'm going to plan on merging those two shapes together and keep them separate for now. There we go. Nice crash. Always be aware of Dynamesh crashing, and be aware of your resolution. If you crank that resolution slider too much, ZBrush will not unfreeze. It will not save your file, and you will lose all your work because you'll have to control delete it. And before you do certain resolutions that you might think might not work, just save it. Or if you have a lot of dodgy geometry, just save it before you do that Dynamesh, because it will freeze and it won't give it back to you. It will be like, hey, I mean, before bed, I've been working on pretty big things. I'm like, well, I'm just going to go to sleep. Let's see if it unfreezes. And maybe twice it has fixed itself, but it would have taken, I think it took like 2 hours of it sitting there crunching the super high res Dynamesh that I've accidentally applied. And other instances, it never came out of it. It was stuck in a coma. Got stuck there, and yeah, pretty much not coming out. It's all over. So you gotta accept it. Sometimes you have hope and you're like, it might unfreeze. So you go off and you eat some food and you come back and it's been like maybe 10-15 minutes. You're like, oh, I'll give it another 10 minutes. No, still won't do it. So just admit defeat, because the quicker you move forward, the better. So you'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean by it. So you do get dodgy meshes once you start extracting meshes and pulling meshes from one another, and the mesh geometry can get pretty dirty. So yeah, be saving quite a lot. So that's when you really push things and in doing that. So working on this, I forgot the bloody name of that thing. I'd love to be able to Google it. Let me see. What is the back of a motorbike called? Back axle? I don't know if that's called an axle. T-bone? Is it the T-bone? Is it a T? It's a T. T-bone? Motorbike? No. It'll be a fluke if I got that right. No, it's not. T-bone is a car crash. not a pretty car crash. Yeah, I think it's like there is. I know that the front of the motorbike called forks. So, but I don't know the back of that. the arm. So we're just doing some alpha maps and laying on top, nothing too serious, really dirty stuff there. Making this type of geometry, it's not making cylinders and things like that with Dynamesh is always tricky because you have no control over the cylinder as you would with a sub D or CAD environment where you can control details much more easily. So figuring out a look for this back axle is tricky, and I'm trying not to like do that super sci-fi look. I'm trying to be like, hey, maybe this is applicable in the real world, and this might be designed on a real bike. And the name for it would be called brake cooker. So there's a terminology, basically, if you ever see cars and they have rims and they're all closed, and these are called brake cooker rims, and basically there's no ventilation for the rim to allow air to cool down the disc, the brake disc, and that brake disc can overheat. And these don't make efficient motorbike rims. So essentially, yeah, don't do that. That's if you well, you don't put them on your car if you're going to go racing. So but I'm just trying to figure out something here, see what works, see what doesn't work. That was a cool little symmetrical bug where I mirrored and welded the wrong axis. And sometimes you get those happy mistakes, but majority of times they do not work. They tend to look bad. But sometimes it works. Sometimes really it doesn't. So. Not too sure what this shape is. I assume maybe it could be like the gearbox around there, but the gearbox would be the cylindrical shape where it changes gears and drives the motor from the back axle, the front end to the back. So I think it'd be called a powertrain. I'm not too up to date with the lingo for things like that, so just have a basic knowledge of things. I mean, you could always study and get a real good in-depth knowledge, and that would help even further. So. I'm just trying to make a point where that would rotate, and I'm testing the clearance. As you can see, hey, gotta test things. Doesn't hurt. Took me 2 seconds to do that. Test some clearance and see how that all looks.
Just trying to line things up so things kind of connect and be a little bit more real world understanding of how these two shapes join together in that cylindrical shape. And just having a reinforced shape there to make it not look too fragile. So now these like the pegs for where you put your feet. I didn't reference pegs really. I should have referenced some pegs. I have an understanding of what the pegs look like since I grew up with motorbikes. So they have like a little grip on them, and they're kind of a bit not transparent, but they're just like a frame that you put your feet on. And yeah, if you don't wear pants, your knees can you can hit those and it can hurt. So you end up kneeing them, and it's not pretty. Motorbikes are like they're so dangerous. I've stacked a motorbike. I think I was going pretty fast on one. Pretty fast, and I just stacked it and bent the front forks and got so winded, and got a scar on my stomach from where the handlebars, I think where the handlebars went into me. I'm not sure if that was another accident where I stacked a bike, but yeah, I was pretty winded coming off that. Lucky I didn't do any damage, but yeah. It's fun. It's fun riding motorbikes. It's exhilarating. So dangerous, super dangerous. There's in life, there's the risk of hurting yourself with any type of exhilarating thing like that. The more dangerous, the more thrilling. That's what I find. I think it's like you subconsciously know that this is dangerous, and so there's an extra level of exhilaration behind it. That's why people are essentially, when you get those people who are like daredevils, and they just the more crazy things they do, the more addictive they get to it. So I'm just getting a little bit of that integration of this metal framing. So it's all kind of hidden now. So you can see I've hidden that the motor. So it's an electric motor, and I just have to think out what type of motor I want to do there. I'm still thinking, because it looks a bit too boring now. So closing up that geometry and covering it and deleting the old petrol engine underneath would have made it too boring. So this is an instance where I have to reassess how to fix that issue, because now it's become an issue since I've it's a little bit of a backtrack, but not too much. I measured the pros and cons of doing such a thing, and I ultimately decided it would be for the best. Just doing the bolt details, nothing special, just something to register, something to the eye, so the viewer understands that's a nut and a bolt. Pretty much, you don't have to go in there and add a bolt. I wouldn't bother, unless you have like a bolt alpha. I think I do, but I just couldn't be bothered. And it's you're focusing on form here, the design. You're not just don't get caught up in the minutiae of doing things. Your focus is on the design. These things can always be done later. So here I'm still committed to the front face of this design, and I'm doing the indicators there. And as soon as I added those indicators, it went like, hey, this is like a corny motorbike, because all cool concept bikes tend to not have these kind of like road safety things on them. That's what I've been finding. So like they only got a light and a brake light. I think if it was up to concept artists, they would never put brake lights on a design, because it's orange, and the orange color is like, it's like, hey, I'm indicating my desired direction. And instead of, I think with the car design, it's like I'm going forward here with no indicators. Like I'm just going to take whatever damn choice I want. And it's kind of like if you're adding a certain emotion to it, so you can make it more aggressive when it's got no presence of what direction it could go. That's what I take from it anyway. But who knows what's it could be that, could be something else. But at some point I'll get rid of this head of the design, but I end up making some internal structures there because I'm like, well, you need something for some sort of framing inside there to hold up the head of that casing, so, and the lights and things like that. So getting some clearance for the disc. The discs are a bit funny here. They're probably way too big, and I know that front wheel's odd, but I kept it. It looked cool. And it kind of, since the roundness, the massive cylinder structure at the back is so big, I wanted to mirror that with a different type of instance of rubber, in this instance of a certain shape. So I wanted to mirror the front and the back, but in different type of styles. So, but the idea there is there's two cylindrical shapes, similar size on the front and back. So there's a relatability there of them still being in a certain correlation of visual language understanding, and that's why I did that. And so instead of having just a disc at the front, it would look kind of empty in comparison to the back. Again, I'm sorry for the focused work time, 2 hours until chat, text at the top. Hopefully that will go away soon. It is just a byproduct of recording while I'm on Twitch. Not a byproduct, but a mistake. So, but you're still getting the content, and this is why I narrate these videos. So I explain in detail the thought processes that I'm going over, and so you have an understanding and a learning that you can come along with me here. And yeah, so you can really see now, I would say at this point, that the design language is really coming together. And you can really see that with the shape and the forms and the flow and the readability of the line work and things flowing there, for me anyway. I'm not sure for you, but they're starting to flow, and I'm going in and massaging the secondary details there and getting more flow and understanding and things like that. So
So in your mind, you have to start assessing which is a type of paneling and what is a type of subframe where the construction of the bike sits, and so where the frame, pretty much where the framing is, and all the panel work sits on top of that framing, and that is essentially what you're creating here with the final detailing and visual understanding. So you need to be aware of things like that, a sense of engineering, structural engineering, the integrity of a shape, what would reinforce a shape. You don't have to go to engineering school for that. You could study that in numerous things. And also you're adding a stylistic way of doing that, and a new way of doing that, and also just generally try to be creative when you do all this stuff. Really it is. It's just, when it comes comes to shove, they might make this thing and, look, you got to change this, you got to change that, and you've totally cocked it up in every instance, and you totally suck as a concept designer. But then through that iteration process, you learn how to design a little better the next time working with engineers. And until you start working with engineers, you wouldn't know. I haven't worked with engineers before, but at some point I'll hopefully get that chance. And you'll learn about that. You make better designs, better choices. But there's always going to be that area of every concept. Essentially, when you see a concept, it gets almost down. Almost like, I don't know, it's like down cooled. It's almost like it's not as cool anymore when when you actually got to get it made. Concepts never seem to quite live up to the real thing when they do make say a car, and it's like real. It's like, hey, it looks nothing like the concept. And you do get that a fair few times, majority of the time actually. So just cleaning up some of these edges, getting them to match up, making sure the flow from one edge to another. You can see that I want these two edges to meet and flow from one to another. So it's looking a bit cooler there. It's got some negative space on the inside there. I'm just making some clearance for the internal engine and things like that, because it was just a big chunk there. And I've also added some Boolean operations for some internal. So there'll be a subframe behind that. It's almost like a cover for the engine there, and there's some bolt holes that I'll add alpha to. I have to Boolean those out at some point, and those will they're pretty much, you can imagine like a subframe on the inside attached to the engine, and all this kind of attaches together once you've put a bolt in there. Just trying to clean up that edge, but it didn't work. Trying to reclip the flat surface. I just kind of thought, I'll leave it like that. It was a bit of a tricky thing to reclip, with the flat edge on a flat surface, I would say.
So I'm just creating an edge along there, thinking that would look good. Just catch a little bit more light. Things like that, paying attention to that, where you, like I was saying before, where you have those square edges, and you can either fillet them or chamfer them, and that was a chamfer along that edge, and you can really see very simple things like that add so much. Even so, you can see how far away I am there, and that chamfer just added. It's really, since you're creating two edges, right? So you're creating the readability from really far away, and essentially that's what's happening there. If I was to chamfer it, it will, fillet that edge, it would smooth off into the rest of the line work. So little things like that they're just like gold when you're designing. It's such a simple thing, but it does wonders, and that's where a certain level of understanding and I don't know if you call it mastery come into play when you pay attention to such things. So you can have all the details in the world, but not the right detail, and those designs don't look so great. So I think again, people are stuck in doing details, and they have no understanding of why they're doing these details. And this is why I'm really paying attention to this and doing tutorials based on really good design tutorials, and explaining certain processes of coming up with good designs, because I think there's not enough of it, and there can always be more. So I think we tend to get lost in the technical, and just being somewhat detail and technically impressive, when art is all about the art. At the end of the day, it's you could have technical stuff coming out of your design like no tomorrow, and it will depreciate pretty quickly. And when you have great art, it's the depreciation of great art and understanding of how things look, and visual language is always a key thing to remind yourself of. You're better off putting more time into the flow of the design than obsessing about the details. At the end of the day, your obsession about details will be soon forgotten, and it's about overall form. And if you can get the details on top, that's where that level of mastery becomes into it, because you've managed to balance so many things that you are essentially able to incorporate details on top of that, and to the viewer that can be really impressive. So I'll be paying attention to that if I was you guys. That is the level of mastery that comes with years of working, because you're able to balance all these things, and ultimately that's what I see when people don't have enough practice or understanding, that they overshoot things, or just they're not aware of what they're doing. And as a human being, if you're not aware and not consciously aware of balancing things and how you look at designs, you'll probably fail, and you'll continue to fail. And it's when you pay attention to things in life, it's like you're pretty much coming to that level of understanding of, okay, this is how I can make things better. Let me try this, and do this, and etc., etc. So
It's trying to get that. The back. I have no idea what that thing is called. The back of that to work, where it connects to the wheel. I swear I know the name for it, but you wouldn't call it an axle. An axle is something that goes through the wheel, and I have no idea what that's called. But yeah, getting that to work and certain design that catches light, has certain form, and I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. So this block there in the middle of the bike, I'll have to assess. So yeah, this was an interesting little experiment. I ended up adding some ribbing. It looked a bit fish-like, but doing that was, to me, it's like this electric bike. It has a certain casing that you might be able to get away with being electric, and I could be a little bit more creative there. And so I was, trying to lay down some lines, get them all, try and get them even, which I mostly got even. Eyeballed it, but good enough. Sure, you could make a brush for such an occasion where you want to draw something like that, where it's all evenly spaced. But yeah, I'm just playing with it and seeing what I can get away with. You can see me move these edges around and generally have some fun with it. But yeah, it was tricky to convince myself to keep this type of form there without it being, I don't know, there was a sense of distraction coming from me when I added that, but there was also a sense of purpose, and I was ultimately like, I got to have this in here, and I'll really try and incorporate it. And this can be, you can get to this point, you're like, I've added this thing, it looks funny, and you're thinking, well, how are you gonna keep this there? And ultimately, it's the thing of just chipping away at it, and as you can see, I've left it there, and I just I put it there, and I thought, what the hell, this might work later, and let's see. And I do end up exploring it and keeping it, which was a good thing. I went with my gut feeling on it. And yeah, it worked out great, and you'll be able to see how I refine that later. There's a certain part of you that we should, when you come up with ideas like that, try not to attack them all at first. Like try and add to it and a little bit here and there. As you can see, I've come back to it. I was ready to change some of the form and build up and break up the repetition, because I was like, man, that's way too repetitive. There's too much repetition for me to be happy with. I am I tend to have a tendency to oppose repetition at certain events of when I'm making stuff, but I think repetition on design is a thing that can be easily done, and if it can be recognized, it doesn't feel right to me anyway. When there's too much repetition and it's recognized, you can have lots of repetition. We kit bash things, but a good kit basher is a skilled kit basher at hiding those things. So essentially, each line is the same as the other lines. So what I did is I changed up some of the lines and how they work, and so then that repetition is broken up, and that's what I did there. Certain instances, yes, you'll have repetition, but for things like that, I try to change it up. There's certain things that you can't get around it. You can't get around the fact that you will have repetition, and that's normal. But for this, I wanted to, as I scan over the bike in that area, I want to be able to. It's almost like repetition can be boring. Also, because I know what I'm going to expect. I'm just going to get the same thing again and again. So if I can keep the viewer interested in this shape, that then I'm showing importance to that area and not boring them. So that would be my true kind of analogy of what I'm doing with that there. So yeah, there we go. I would say that's more of a breakdown of that understanding for that part of the design. So. And that can apply to a lot of different other areas. So.
So just giving some edges polish, just working on those edges, defining the edges correctly. Doing some internal framing, just to lighten up some of that framework and create a bit more of a believability inside there. Getting close to the end here. Everything is almost done. Almost there. So just doing a little, some of the kind of fun detailing here is some of the framework that you see on motorbikes. And some alphas, it'll be basic. Just to register something, some sort of detail. And at the last minute, I believe I get rid of the head of the design for the front of the light there. And that was my little final kind of to bring everything together. And at that, there's a lot of things at the end where you have the aha moment and you take away something from the design. You're like, yep, there we go. I fixed it. It can be like that. You literally fix it. And there's something that's nagging you about it. And I think you have to be brave to do that. You have to be willing to experiment and take things away when you think you've overworked something. Because at this step, let's be honest, you've probably overworked something by accident. And if you do it, you should be ready to experiment with taking things away and adding things back. So that's the thing I was experimenting with there, but I'm not sure if I really try too much. You'll see at the last minute I'll bring this together. Because there's a lot of things that are still nagging me, or a couple things I should say are nagging me, and I'm like, what is it? So I want to bring more detail to this type of detail where I assume there's an electric engine and somewhat there will be some details that have an interest, and I want to bring interest to that and show that, hey, look, this is an electric bike, and there's a certain functionality of these things. Maybe it cools the engine down or it does something. So I'm just trying to change some of that shape there. Just seeing what can I do.
ultimately I delete that cylinder out, which was a big commitment to get rid of. But yeah, just I thought, well, I was playing with the visibility and I was like, it looks better without this thing there. So I believe I do something like that. Bit of a happy mistake, but I think my explorative nature of keep on trying to dig a little deeper into something and explore almost like an investigation. It's like, hey, why does this work? Why does this work? And so curiosity is it's always good to have at these later steps here. Because it's just like sometimes it's one thing that brings things together. It's such a weird thing. It really is. I'm not sure what was happening here. I think I was just trying to do something. Oh, what am I doing? Alright. I was just trying out something that didn't work. So now we're doing some more tertiary stuff here. Just getting things to come together a little more. And we're getting to that point of, there we go, got rid of the front of the design. I was like, what the hell, let's get rid of this thing. I want to trash it. I get like that. Like, I hate it. This thing, it's bugging me. And I just trash it, get rid of it. Get a little bit of aggressive, a bit of, a bit monkey-like on it. Just like, get rid of this thing. Don't, like I was saying, don't get married to things. Look at that. That looks cool now. And I was like, I'm going to expose that subframe. And like, that's cool. That's cool. That's what you want. Sometimes if stuff doesn't work, just get rid of it. Don't get married to stuff. Divorce it. Like, it's going to cause you pain. Get rid of it. You don't have to get stuck with just because you've put time into it. You'd rather get rid of it. Get it over with. There's nothing wrong with losing that front of that thing for the sake of growth of the overall design. So, because I now look at that and I'm like, yes, I like it. And that's what I was saying. One little thing can really make things go. And that's where the mastery comes from. Identifying such things and seeing where the eye is being displeased in such a way. And you're like, don't like this. And then listening to that and figuring out and problem solving, how then you can take the essence of what's there and interject it back without losing. Because essentially you've designed a look around that front of that design, and the rest of the design essentially reflects that. And so what I did is, I have an internal subframe here, and that still reflects the external shell that I got rid of. And I was thinking, how can I add that back? That essence of that subframe will have to emote the shape of the shell to then be still in agreement with the line work that I have there. So that's what I came up with ultimately. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing when I'm designing. So I'm doing it. So many little micro understandings of doing those things. So I'm not just like donkey putting things together. I'm really digesting things and analyzing things. And it's not, you're not just slapping shapes together and hoping things work. You're digesting things and creating an understanding for these things. So now I'm just attempting to do
this frame, this little detail here. I kind of like flutes on a motorbike, or on a old school engine. So that's I'm just trying a detail here using one of the corny alphas. I was thinking maybe it might work. You never know. Like some of those stock alphas in ZBrush can work. I'm sitting and figuring out how to make this a little bit more agreeable with the detailing for the rest of the bike. And we are almost finished. I'll provide some of the final renders at the end there, and you guys can also check out the ZBrush ZTL. You guys can have a little study of that, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and got something from it. And until next time, guys, I'm really going to try and keep on doing these things and different type of tutorials. So, alright guys, you can see how he's being posed and tested, and it's all come together. Alright guys, take care.